Thanks for joining us, guys. This next 10 minutes or so, you'll be seeing some footage that didn't make it into the Ferrofluid spot that just went up online. And I'm here with Tom, who also works with me here at The Verge.
Hey, how's it going? Yes, I am also a Verge video person, and here to just ask a ton of questions about what you have done. Because from my perspective, I walked in and saw, I don't want to say a mess, but I would say a mess in our VR room. And I think that's a good place to start. You got a lot of really interesting shots with Ferrofluid in this video. And for me, my perspective, looking at your setup was fascinating because you completely destroyed a room. And I think now you are held accountable for that. Explain to me why you destroyed our room.
I didn't realize going into this how messy this stuff was going to be. I have seen videos of Ferrofluid on YouTube, which, YouTube is filled with videos of this stuff, but you don't really get a sense of scale when you're working with this, or when you see the stuff. So I thought maybe it was, a couple inches wide. I wasn't exactly sure how tall the spikes were going to be when I put this magnet up to it. And when I got it in the mail and started playing with it, I realized that I'm actually working on a much smaller scale than I anticipated.
And this is the lens choice that you have, right? This is why we see it in this macro view.
Exactly. So this particular setup was the Sony A7S. We typically only shoot with 100mm macro. And for this shoot, I wanted to go with the 65 MPE, which is this lens that we actually rented. It's super cheap. I mean, it rents for $20 a day. Not a lot of people use it.
It's a Canon lens. I've honestly never heard of it.
It's a Canon lens, and I hadn't either. And actually, the guy one of the guys, Abby, in the equipment room was like, "Oh, this would be the perfect lens for it." I looked it up. It's super weird. It telescopes out 8 inches, but you can get 5:1. So you can get really macro shots, and the depth of field is beautiful. You just get more depth of field and this great bokeh. Just the images that you get out of it are great. And I think for this shoot, it was perfect. So there were some things that I set up that originally thought were going to be in the piece, but weren't. And one is this tank shot. I basically bought an acrylic tank from the Container Store and wanted to do this side shot of the Ferrofluid kind of going up the side. I went online to try to find out what the best kind of suspension liquid would be for Ferrofluid, where it doesn't streak or it doesn't glob together or start deteriorating. And a lot of people were talking about just this mix of distilled water and isopropyl alcohol. And I was really excited at first when I started playing. It was the first shot of the night. I was like, oh, this is really cool. But then I started to see this really gross brown streaking.
Oh yeah, oof.
I don't know, it just didn't look clean.
Is it just kind of evaporating on there, or is it actually moving along with it just slower?
It's still moving along. I think that the choice of acrylic was not great for this, because acrylic doesn't have the same properties as glass. It's a little more porous. So looking at this stuff after I shot it, I was just like, this isn't that clean. And for this piece, I wanted to be, clean and crisp and kind of sexy.
And now this is glass, right?
Now this is glass. And you can see the difference, it's not streaking. It's much cleaner. The glass is a little dirty, but I think it gives the appearance that it's in a vessel. And it's not perfect, but it's clean. Mm-hmm. And it's not streaking. The cool thing here that I didn't know, so I think, again, I was messing with the proportions of alcohol to water.
Right.
I think I put enough alcohol in that it kind of broke up the Ferrofluid. To a point where you have individual spikes.
Oh yeah, I can totally see that.
Whereas if it's on a table, it's just one big black blob.
Right. And the spikes kind of protrude from that.
Exactly. This, I was just playing around and I was like, wow, I've never seen these individual spikes not being connected at the base.
Right.
And it looked like CGI.
Yes,
it looks
very
totally
CGI.
computer generated. This was a mistake. In this one particular test, I clearly used too much alcohol. Oh. And the cool thing,
really strandy.
It's getting really strandy, and I think the Ferrofluid started breaking down and forming these stringy clumps, and almost like a
weird,
full ribbon.
This feels more sci-fi than anything some sort of bad Terminator 2 style thing that's just not forming correctly.
It was really bizarre. And again, I wanted to use this in the piece. I think it looks really cool, but that's not what Ferrofluid is supposed to look like.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's definitely I think people would see this and be like, you really messed up your experiment. That's not, like, whatever you bought online is not ferrofluid
Right.
because it does not act like that.
From a like filmmaking standpoint, right? Like there is this idea of how you like approach an image, and when something is as visually stunning and interesting as this, like adding camera motion, adding any kind of movement there, adding even a racked focus, right? It just takes away from just seeing this thing play out. So I've always really enjoyed this choice to just sort of like hold it and allow the ferrofluid to be what's interesting.
Yeah, I really wanted to play into some of the long takes that we get for that exact reason.
Right.
I loved playing with how it just absorbed back into the oil
Yes,
when it falls, and then it just goes completely black.
Right. Yeah, it's very cool.
I shot that way more than I needed to. I have so many shots of this oil just disappearing. The other cool thing I will say about the bokeh is that since you're dealing with an oil, some of the refractions have this really cool rainbow effect. It's like when you look at
I can
like
see
an
that.
oil
Yeah,
slick
yeah.
in water.
Right.
You know, you see the rainbow. So a lot of people, they'll see this at first and they'll be like, oh, cool, you shot black and white.
Right.
Like,
But there's
no.
like a little bit of color kind of mixed in there.
Yeah, so like a lot of the reflected light, sometimes it would come off with like this purple or this blue
Right.
or a full rainbow. And then other times it would come off all white.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see that color. And it takes a while for it to register, but that's
Right.
actually like the spectrum of
Yeah,
of
I feel
oil
like I've
and-
seen a lot of this, and I like until you paused and showed that, like I did not notice that color there before, but it was really great. Oh boy. So
Yeah.
tell me about these things.
So many people have done this screw experiment.
Okay.
So there's a magnet under the plate glass. On top of the plate glass is just a standard screw standing straight up. And you just take your eyedropper and you drop some ferrofluid on the top of the screw, and it suddenly starts to make this like blackberry looking
Yeah.
thing at the top, and it spirals all the way down.
So what is causing that sort of like I don't know movement downwards? Like is that just gravity pulling the ferrofluid down?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's one, the attraction of the ferrofluid
Towards the magnet, right.
but also it has this thread that's kind of guiding it
Yeah.
along the way. And this was a lot of fun to shoot, but when I reviewed the footage, I was like, this just doesn't match the other stuff that I shot at all. It removes you from, you know, you can see like my interaction with it. It looks like someone set these screws up. Like it feels like a human was there.
It's also really hard to, like, if you didn't tell me this was a screw, I don't know that I would like make that connection in my mind without having that sense of scale with it, right?
Yeah.
But
The
very
shapes,
fun pineapple looking.
yeah, pineapple, or I was thinking like artichoke.
Right.
The shapes are really cool, and maybe in a different video it would work.
Yeah.
But I wanted to include these here because I think the images are really cool and the way
Yeah.
that they just play.
For anyone who would be considering doing this themselves, what would be like 3 main pieces of advice you'd want to give to them kind of like getting started with something like this?
Definitely the lens choice is super important. A really simple lighting setup. Don't light it too much. You'll be really pleased with like how one light can make these really dramatic images. And keep your cameras away from the magnets.
Yeah. Well, Corey, I'm very excited. I think your mess was worth it. I will hereby say that like I fully approve what you have done in that room.
I will say I won't be upset if I never play with ferrofluid again, because I think I got 8 hours worth of play in, and that's about all I need.